Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and seen them give up on saving you? Have you ever felt your soul begin to slip, even as your heart still beats? That night, as his lungs closed and time stopped, he heard a voice that no one else could hear. You can't die. You have work to do. What happened next changed his life, and maybe it might change yours too. It started like any other Sunday in Los Angeles. The sky was soft with that golden hue only California seems to own. I had just turned 24, and though the city still felt like borrowed space, I was slowly making it my home. A clean slate, a new coast, a life of my own making. That night I was at a friend's birthday dinner at a quiet restaurant. No alcohol for me, just ginger ale and good company. The cake came around, it looked like chocolate. Innocent. Harmless. I took a bite, small and casual, barely registering the taste. And then, something shifted. A tingle on my lips. A warm pulse in my throat. Subtle, but unmistakable. I'd lived my whole life with a peanut allergy. But nothing serious had ever happened. 24 years of caution and luck. I carried an EpiPen, yes, but it was expired. They always were. It had never felt urgent. Until now. Still, I didn't panic. I said goodnight, drove myself home, and told myself I was just being cautious. I'd take a couple of Benadryl, sleep it off, wake up fine. Lying in bed, I scanned every breath, every heartbeat. Was I imagining this? Was I hot from anxiety or fever? Was the air really getting heavier, or was it just fear whispering in my ear? Then I looked in the mirror. Hives, neck, face, arms, red and swelling. That wasn't fear, that was real. I searched for my EpiPen, found it. Expired. Still no idea if it would work. But this wasn't the time for guesswork. It was 11 p.m. The streets were quiet. Thank God. I got in my car, gripped the wheel with shaking hands, and drove myself to the nearest emergency room. My breath was ragged now, short, sharp, my throat constricting like it had a will of its own. I burst through the ER doors. A nurse looked up at me, expression calm until she saw my face. I'm having an allergic reaction, I said, or tried to say. The words felt like they were tumbling out of a tunnel. Do you have ID? She asked. My fingers couldn't work. I couldn't pull the card from my wallet. Motor skills. Fading. She jumped from her chair. Another nurse came running. One grabbed each arm and guided me to a bed. And then the lights exploded into motion. Hands on my chest. Oxygen tubes. IV needles. Voices overlapping. Urgent. Something cool slid into my vein. I felt it. I saw it. But my body wasn't responding. I was dying, and I knew it. Time no longer made sense. There was no clock, no sense of minutes or hours, just awareness. I could feel the inside of my own body shutting down. Breathing, gone. Speech, gone. Pain, no, not anymore. There was only silence. And something else, something I didn't expect. Peace. The doctors were working, frantic, focused, but I could see the resignation creeping into one of their faces. His eyes met mine. I'm sorry, he said. I can't save you. I wasn't angry. I wasn't afraid. It felt like the world had dimmed. No sound, no sensation, just surrender. And then, I saw them. Two figures clear as day. Not ghosts, not hallucinations. Family. My grandfather on my mother's side, gone before I was born, and my father's father, who died when I was still a toddler. I recognized them instantly, without explanation. I felt their presence like a warm wave, beyond language, beyond logic. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The message was instant and absolute. You can't die. You have work to do. Everything changed. My acceptance shattered like glass. Something inside me screamed, no, I'm not done. I can't leave. I took a breath, a deep, burning breath, and the pain rushed in like fire. But I was back. I don't know how long I had been gone. Time, as we know it, had lost all its grip. There was no ticking clock, no sense of minutes slipping by. There was only presence. The moment I surrendered, the very instant I let go of life, I crossed into something vast, infinite, and breathtakingly still. It wasn't a tunnel or a flash of light. It was more like a veil lifted. One second I was in a hospital bed suffocating, the next I was in a space that felt more real than anything I had ever touched or seen before. It was light, but not like sunlight or artificial light. It was a luminous, living presence. Not white, but a blend of gold, soft blue, and a hue I don't think we even have a name for. The light didn't shine on things. It came from everything, from the space, from the air, from me. There was no fear, no pain, no doubt. Only a stillness so deep it felt like love had taken the shape of silence. I couldn't feel my body. I didn't miss it. I had form, but not flesh. Movement was not walking. It was more like intention. I thought, and I moved. I remembered, and I arrived. The moment I wondered where I was, I knew. I didn't need questions. Understanding came like a wave. Complete, gentle, unquestionable. I was not alone. All around me I sensed presence. Some close, some far, some watching, some waiting. But none of them were threatening. Quite the opposite. It was like I had stepped into a grand cathedral made of light and memory, and I was being welcomed home. The atmosphere was rich with a hum, a sound that wasn't sound at all. It vibrated in my being. It felt like music, but it was coming from within me as much as from the world outside. A resonance that said, "You are known. You are safe. You are eternal." At one point, I remember seeing something that resembled a vast field, glowing and endless, where the grass shimmered like threads of crystal under the light. Above me, a sky without sun, but fully illuminated, alive with shifting patterns of color. It was as if the air itself breathed. I felt emotion I had no name for, gratitude, awe, recognition, a peace so profound, I thought, if this is death, then why do we fear it so much? And then, like a whisper through silk, I became aware of two familiar souls. They didn't approach. They emerged, as if they'd always been there, just outside my reach. My grandfathers. One I had never known. The other I barely remembered. But there they were, as real as the breath I had just lost. Not as old men, but as radiant beings, whole and full of warmth. Their eyes met mine. No words. They didn't need them. And in that sacred stillness, I felt the message enter me, not through sound, but through certainty. You can't stay. You have work to do. For a moment I resisted, not out of fear, but out of longing. I didn't want to leave this place. I wanted to stay in that embrace, in that timeless peace. But their presence was firm, loving, and clear. And suddenly I saw glimpses, not memories, but possibilities. Faces I hadn't met. Moments not yet lived. Smiles I could give. Hands I could hold. Pieces of a future that I hadn't yet walked into. Pause and reflect. If you've ever felt a spiritual calling or moment you couldn't explain, share it in the comments. The space around me began to shift. The colors began to fade, not like an ending, but like a curtain being drawn slowly closed. I felt a pull. Not a forceful tug, but a gentle invitation. It was time. I turned to my grandfathers once more. They didn't say goodbye. They only smiled. And in their eyes, I felt something I'd never fully known in this life. The deepest kind of love. The kind that expects nothing. The kind that remembers. And just like that, I began to fall. Not downward, but inward. The hum of light receded. The pain of the world surged back in like a flood breaking through a dam. My body screamed. My chest burned. My lungs clawed for air. I was back. But everything had changed. What was once familiar now felt foreign, and what I had seen refused to fade. Something was waiting on the other side of this return, and soon I'd learn what it truly meant to live with the weight of a message from beyond. Waking up didn't feel like waking up at all. It was more like being slammed back into existence. The warmth, the stillness, the silence of that other place had vanished. What replaced it was weight. My own body, dense and sore, like I had fallen from the sky into myself. I gasped, a raw, broken gasp. My throat burned. My chest ached with every inhale as if my lungs had to be taught how to breathe again. The soft hum of eternity was gone. Now, all I could hear was beeping machines, muffled voices, the rustle of medical gloves. Life was loud, chaotic, and deeply painful. Nurses hovered near my bed. One looked at me with wide, astonished eyes. Another checked a screen and whispered something I couldn't quite catch. My vision was blurred. My skin felt too tight, like I had outgrown my own flesh. Every nerve was firing. But beneath the physical confusion, something deeper was stirring. I had brought something back with me. In the hours that followed, I learned I had been unconscious for 7 hours, not minutes as I'd assumed. The doctors were amazed I had survived. One even said quietly, "We almost lost you." I nodded but didn't answer. I didn't tell them I had been lost. I didn't know how to. I was released from the hospital the next morning, still in a daze. I walked to my car slowly, the world around me sharper, louder, more saturated. The simple act of unlocking the door, sitting behind the wheel, and driving home felt surreal. Nothing felt like mine anymore. Not my clothes, not my apartment, not even my thoughts. And yet everything was still there. My things, my life, my body. But I wasn't the same. In the days that followed, I fell into a strange rhythm of recovery. My muscles ached. My head felt full of static. I was constantly exhausted. But it wasn't just physical. It was emotional, existential, like my soul was trying to understand what body it had been poured back into. Then something odd happened. 3 days after returning home, I walked past a small flower shop. There was a rose bush outside, vibrant and full. On impulse, I leaned in and smelled one of the blooms. And I smelled it. Not faintly, not vaguely, but richly, fully. A scent so layered and alive it brought tears to my eyes. I had never truly smelled anything before. Not like that. And the realization hit me so hard I began to cry, right there on the sidewalk, with a rose in my hand and no way to explain what was happening. From that moment on, the world wouldn't leave me alone. Colors were brighter, sounds were deeper. People's emotions pressed into me. I began to sense things before they happened, small things at first, like knowing who was calling before I looked at my phone. But it grew. I'd meet strangers and feel an ache in their chest before they said a word. I couldn't explain it. I didn't dare to. I thought I was losing my mind. I tried to return to normal, work, routine, conversations about weather and weekend plans. But nothing fit. I was present, but not truly here. I was living in 2 worlds, one foot in the ordinary, one planted in something far beyond it. I started searching, quietly at first. Articles, forums, medical reports. I wasn't looking for comfort. I was looking for truth. I needed to know what had happened to me. I couldn't be the only one. Someone, somewhere, had to understand. That's when I found the term near-death experience, NDE. It was like a floodgate opened. I found testimonials, studies, interviews, people describing exactly what I had felt. The light, the peace, the communication beyond words. They weren't crazy, and maybe, neither was I. I found a list of traits common in NDE survivors. Out of 30, I had 29. Physical, emotional, spiritual shifts. It was all there, spelled out like a mirror to my soul. That's when I reached out. There was a woman, someone experienced, compassionate, who listened as I poured it all out. The moment I finished, she said, Oh, honey, you had a near-death experience. And for the first time since that night, I exhaled without fear. It wasn't just trauma. It wasn't just hallucination. It was real, and it had meaning. But now came the hardest part. What was I supposed to do with it? Because surviving was only the beginning. The real journey was about to start. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. On the outside, life seemed to return to normal. I woke up. I worked. I laughed at jokes. I went to the grocery store. But inside me, a storm was still settling. The experience I had didn't end at the hospital. It had etched itself into every layer of who I was. Each morning I would stare into the mirror and search for someone I used to know. But the reflection no longer matched the person I had become. I had seen something eternal. I had been somewhere eternal. And now, trying to live a regular life felt like walking through a house I had outgrown. I kept most of it to myself. I didn't talk about the light, or the voices, or how I could suddenly sense a shift in someone's energy before they even spoke. When people asked about that night, I gave them the sanitized version. I had a bad allergic reaction. I was lucky. That's all. And they would nod, satisfied, because the real story, well, the real story was too big, too sacred, but it followed me. I couldn't unsee the faces of my grandfathers. I couldn't unfeel that otherworldly peace. And I couldn't forget the words, "You have work to do." What work? I asked myself that question 1,000 times. I wasn't a prophet. I wasn't a healer. I was just a guy who'd eaten the wrong cake. But the feeling wouldn't leave me, that I had been given something, entrusted with something. Not for fame, not for fortune, but maybe for someone else. 6 months passed, then a year, 2. I carried it quietly, trying to integrate the sacred into the mundane. I stopped chasing answers. Instead, I started listening, watching, trusting that whatever purpose I had been given would unfold at its own pace. Then one day, a friend mentioned they were going through something dark. Hopelessness, confusion, a feeling of being lost. And without thinking, I told them my story. Not the filtered version, the whole thing. From the breathless panic to the golden silence. I expected disbelief. But what I saw in their eyes was something else entirely. Relief. It was like they had been waiting to hear that story, like it had been meant for them. In that moment I realized, maybe this was the work. Not to fix people, not to preach, but to share, to witness, to be living proof that something more exists, that love continues, that we are never truly alone. I started talking more, quietly, respectfully, to those who needed to hear. And as I did, something inside me settled. I wasn't just telling my story. I was reminding others of theirs, of the part of them that had always known there was something beyond this world. Even now, years later, I still feel that pull. I don't claim to have all the answers. I don't need to. What I have is a knowing, a memory of peace, and a promise I made without words, to live in a way that honors the second chance I was given. I still remember the feeling of that breath, the first one back in my body after I said no. It was sharp, painful, real, but it was also the start of everything. And maybe that's the point. We don't get to choose what wakes us up, but we do get to choose what we do once we're awake. This was never just about my survival. It was about remembering something we all know deep down, that life is sacred, that we are here for a reason, and that even in our darkest moments, we are held by something greater than we can understand. If you're still listening, maybe this message was meant for you too. Maybe you're not here by accident. Like I was told on the other side, you can't give up. You have work to do.